What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today I want to get into the idea that a very, very good coach could become available, and if the New York Jets should pursue, that coach is Mike Tomlin. Now, I know Robert Saleh and crew is likely coming back in 2024, but if Tomlin's available, I say, hold the phone. All right, it is time for my underdog fantasy picks. Back again for week 16 for the New York Jets against Washington Commanders matchup. Only 2 plays, $10 to win 30. Here we go. Use my link to sign up on the screen down below in the description or the pinned comment. Sam Howell lower than 212.5 passing yards. I think the New York Jets defense is going to have a good day. They always tend to play well against opposing quarterbacks, get after the quarterback. Howell is someone who takes a lot of sacks, so I don't really see him having a huge productive day. I think it's a low-scoring day. And as for Breece Hall, over or higher than 27.5 receiving yards. I know he didn't have a great game this past week against Miami, but I think he will be back to being utilized in the receiving game and should be able to get this with a couple of catches. So 10 to win 30. Sign up using my link down below in the description and get in on the fun over at Underdog Fantasy. Okay, so Pittsburgh Steelers fans are unbelievably frustrated with their season and with their head coach. They've been frustrated with Mike Tomlin for a very, very long time. Why that frustration is, I'm not quite exactly sure, but there was a report from The Athletic earlier today that was discussing potential coaching vacancies and coaching changes in the NFL. And first, they mentioned Robert Saleh and how that that crew, Saleh, Hackett, Douglas, they are all expected to be back in 2024, which, let's be honest, more likely than not, that is going to be the case. Do I agree with that? Not necessarily, but I could understand why they're doing it. I don't love it, but I understand why. Now, later in that article, they had an interesting nugget on Mike Tomlin. It's a little bit of a longer passage, but I'm going to read it to you, so bear with me because I think it's important to share. Here's what it says. Mike Tomlin's future in Pittsburgh appears to be murky, mostly based on the Steelers' recent performances against the Cardinals, Patriots, and Colts, all losses. A turnaround doesn't look likely before Week 18. The fan base is frustrated, and the team's play collectively lacks the strong Tomlin passion that we are used to seeing every season. Tomlin's contract expires in 2024, and it's well known the Steelers organization won't engage in extension talks with players or coaches during the season. So we wait and see. There has been chatter that perhaps the Steelers would consider trading Tomlin to Washington, Chicago, or even Carolina to get back some picks. I think that's a move the Jets should consider if they aren't sold on their current staff, but I also know the Steelers understand the value of Tomlin in their city. Let's make one thing abundantly clear. The New York Jets should not trade a top 10 pick for a coach. So I'm not saying if it's hey, you got to trade a first-round pick to get Mike Tomlin. Love the guy, not trading a top 10 pick. Washington's projected to pick in the top 10. Chicago's going to have 2 picks in the top 10. Carolina does not have a first-round selection. So if it's not costing a first-round pick, maybe that's a different conversation at that point. But if they just straight up fire him, which I guess maybe isn't out of the question, maybe after 17 years, they're kind of just like, hey, we need a new voice. I get it that they've said to Rodgers, hey, we're going to bring this crew back, but I don't know how you don't go all in on a guy like Mike Tomlin. I personally will drive from Long Island to Pittsburgh, pick him up, come back with him in my car because I am that amped up for the idea of getting Mike Tomlin. As I said, you can't give up a top 10 pick, though. I mean, that is crazy, especially with the Jets' need on the offensive line. Here's how he's done in 17 years with Pittsburgh. Super Bowl champion in 2018. He is 170-102 for a 629 win percentage. He has never had a losing season. That is in jeopardy for the first time this year, as they are 7-7 after a 7-4 start. They're coming off of 3 straight losses and haven't looked great over the last 3 losses. But we're gonna put a pin in that for a second. We're gonna talk about just why they've looked the way that they've had over the last few years. But just put a pin in that for a second. The last time the Steelers won a playoff game was 2016, which is a while ago now, but again, I think there's some reasoning behind it, and I don't know if I'm going to put that on the coach. And again, that's a long time going without winning a playoff game. The Jets have gone much longer without even making the playoffs, but when you look at some of those teams and some of the things that he's done since then, like 2020 when they lose to the I almost said the Ravens. It wasn't the Ravens. It was the Browns. That was a weird game. They started that year 11-0, and then they kind of limped down the finish line. But they made the playoffs in 2021 in Ben Roethlisberger's last season when he was, I mean, let's be honest, folks, he was pretty much cooked his last year. He was not the same guy. And the year prior, he had a much better season, but there were signs of the decline there. And in Ben's last year, them making the playoffs and getting trounced by Kansas City, you're going to put that on the coach? You're going to put that on Mike Tomlin? Well, how about I don't know, last season going 9-8 with Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky splitting starts? I don't know. There's so many examples, I think, of teams that he's had overachieve. In 2019, Ben Roethlisberger gets hurt in week 2. He started 2 games that year. So Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph played the other 14 games, and they still went 8-8. He has gotten so much out of some garbage rosters. And by so much, I mean 500 or better, which, let's be honest, that would be huge for this team. And I know he's a former defensive coordinator, and I've said it a million times where if you're going to go a new direction, I would prefer to go an offensive route. So I don't want this to be the ha gotcha moment, because if you're looking at a coach who has kind of taken over and been closer to that CEO style, I mean, that's Mike Tomlin. No, he's about as close as you can get to a CEO style coach in the modern NFL. Yes, he has a defensive background, but he's been a head coach at the NFL level for 17 years and is widely regarded as a top 10 coach. In my opinion, I think he pushes a top 5 coach in the league. And if another organization is just dumb enough to move on from him, the Steelers have had 3 coaches in the last God knows how many years. It's an insanely long time since the Steelers have changed coaches, and he's been there since 2007, and he's done a really good job. But I love his style. I love his energy. His guys play with they play with a nasty edge. He has that mindset. Again, he's kind of like that CEO style, hard ass on the sideline with the sunglasses. And that's not to say he's throwing his guys under the bus in the anti-Saleh, but I don't know, if you had your choice between Robert Saleh or Mike Tomlin, I don't know how anyone is taking Robert Saleh over Tomlin. Again, is his team's perfect? No. If you don't win a playoff game since 2016, obviously there is some legitimate questions. But again, can we just look at the rosters he's dealt with over the last 5 years, and before you go oh, well, I guess you're signing up to go 9-8 every year. I don't know, his teams stink, man. They've been over. The team last year had no business being over 500 with the quarterback play. And this year, off to the start they got off to, it was very reminiscent of the 2022 Jets when Kenny Pickett was starting and throwing for 130 yards a game. It's this was Zach Wilson last year during the win streak. So I think Mike Tomlin would be a home run get for the Jets. Now, again, I'm not trading a first round pick for Mike Tomlin, and there's still a chance that he ends up staying in Pittsburgh. But I'll reiterate, if another organization's dumb enough to move on from their top 10 head coach in the league, maybe even top 5 coach in the league, I think you got to do what it takes at that point to go out there and get him. So let me know your thoughts on Mike Tomlin and if that's the guy you would like to see in here coaching the Jets next season. Before we go, make sure to subscribe, like the video, share with a friend. I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll catch you next time.